Hi, I'm Randy Ball with Fighter Jets Inc. We own and operate a number of MiG-17 fighters like the one you see behind me. And I'm here today to give you a little bit of a walk around on a MiG-17 and some of its flight characteristics. Starting off at the nose, it's a fairly conventional airplane as far as the tricycle landing gear, except that all three landing gear are trailing link. It was designed that way so that if the Americans bombed the Russian airfields, it could be operated off unimproved fields. There's an old wives' tale that they were designed initially to always operate off unimproved fields. That was not so. They were in fact intended to operate off concrete aircraft, just like runways, just like our aircraft are, but it had the capability. In addition to that, the engine has a FOD screen in front of it that allows you to keep most large foreign matter out of the jet engine for operating off unimproved fields. For an example, I could take your hat off, throw it in the intake, start it up, and go fly an air show with it. Up front, if you can kind of imagine with me, if you split the airframe down vertically, down the middle, all the way back until right behind the this vertical pine, right behind the pilot's seat, that portion of the aircraft is pressurized and is the cockpit. Forward to that is the avionics bay that ran the HUD, has the oxygen bottles in it, battery in it, and from that vertical line to this vertical line, aft, down, and forward is all guns and ammunition. It was one of the highest or largest armament aircraft ever built and carried the largest gun of any airplane, ours, theirs, or anyone else. On this side we have two 23mm cannons. That's approximately a 90 caliber. You want to convert it to something that we normally talk about. On the other side is a 37mm cannon. Huge cannon that did an enormous amount of damage. It didn't carry but 48 rounds, but that's okay. It didn't take a whole lot to down and air their aircraft. Let's walk around the front of the aircraft. At the top is a little red pin sticking up. Our aircraft have a red and yellow or red and green, etc. lights that show gear up, gear down. Theirs did too. But they added a pin for the nose gear as well as two for the two main gears that would tell the pilot whether the gear is down and locked or not. I'll show you something on the nose gear. Down on the nose gear, like the other three landing gear, is a little light. When the airplane's nav light is on, that light will light up white on all three gears, telling the control tower that the gear is down and locked. So the pilot can get notification from the tower. Here's a better angle too of the 37mm, 23mm here, and behind it offset, and a 37mm cannon on this side. It's believed to be the only MiG-17 flying in North America that has its fully restored guns on it. Standby pitot tube on this side was added in the 1980s, shortly, not too long before they were retired, as a backup for the pitot-static system on the airplane. Going back, you'll see the coil in the canopy. That's something we're going to do on a pre-flight. Make sure that's there. If that is pulled, then the canopy, then the seat is live and ready to fire. That coil goes down in the back seat of the ejection seat and prohibits the seat from being able to be jettisoned out of the aircraft until the canopy is out of the way. Much like the movie Top Gun, where Goose hits the canopy and dies. It's really probably more for Hollywood because this seat can't go anywhere until that canopy is out of the way, and pull that pin. That's the original communications antenna that the Russians used. We still use it today, but we use it for our backup radio. The wings are quite an interesting design. Those of you who've had some aerodynamic courses, it'll be quite the interesting study because you have two aerodynamic airfoils. You have a fairly sharp leading edge to the midpoint of the wing, about here, and then you have a more rounded or more cambered wing from that point out. Also, when you get to the end of the wing and look up it, you'll see that it has two different wing sweeps. About 48-degree sweep to this point, and about 45-degree sweep from that point to the wingtip. The original 17 flew with a straight swoop wing, and was a little bit faster, about 70 knots faster, about 1.15 Mach. However, it didn't turn as well, and the Kremlin wanted an aircraft that would outturn any other fighter in the world. This one was redesigned with this, what they call Sickle Wing, with two different airfoils and three of these wing fences to be used instead of wing slats. That allowed the aircraft to outturn anything in the Vietnam War. In fact, it was the tightest turning fighter all the way up until the F-16 flew in the early 70s. The Russians used these wing fences to control boundary air, much like we would do with the wing slats that extend forward. It's kind of interesting to me that you had basically the same aerodynamic problem, But we had different aerodynamics in different parts of the world trying to solve the problem and came up with different solutions. These allow the air to go more over the wing and make a swept wing aircraft operate more like a straight wing aircraft at slow speeds and in a tight, high alpha turn. The advantage of them, of course, is that they're very light, there's no moving parts. Battle damage in combats would be minimally affected the performance of the aircraft. The downside, of course, is that they're always here, and so you have a lot of parasitical drag and it slows the aircraft down at its maximum airspeeds. So which is better? You'll have to decide. There's just two ways to solve the problem that two different countries use to answer the same problem. Out here, pitot tubes are, as you can see, very long. In this generation jet, they didn't have computers that would fix the aerodynamic anomalies from shock wave being built up in front of the wing as it nears the speed of sound. So, much like our F-100 did of its era, you just build a really long pitot tube to try to get it out into smooth air, to clean air ahead of the wing. And it is both pitot and static, with the pitot port here and the static ports on both sides of the boom itself. You might notice these little white discs. There's one on the leading edge, there's one on each wingtip, and there'll be one on the tail of the aircraft. These were early IFF that were added to the aircraft in the mid-60s. They didn't replace radar, but it would tell the aircraft if there was another aircraft in the air that was not its friend. That would be a code of the day that they could dial in, and this would either give them a good or bad light in the cockpit based on whether or not that guy was the good guy or the bad guy, and it kind of tell them which quadrant they were in. Other than that, that was about it. It didn't tell them what type of aircraft or how far away it was. Coming around the back side of the wing, you can see up on the wing the red and white gear pin, which is a mechanical downlock, as we were talking about earlier. Those come up as the gear goes down. And on the other side of the wing, there is a green and white one that will also come up out of the wing as the flap goes down to provide backup to the pilot there. Up on top, through the red cover, is a air scoop that goes down and pressurizes the fuel system. It just kind of provides some anti-foaming and so forth. It faces into the wind and really nothing more about it. This panel here houses the ignition module for the ignition pack for the afterburner. It's a great big coil that's about 300,000 volts at about 30 amps, so you wouldn't want to let it get a hold of you. It'd get kind of mean. But it's designed to light off jet fuel at sea level all the way up to 50,000 feet. Coming aft, this aircraft differed from a MiG-15 in a couple of different ways. It's 2.5 to 3 feet longer. It sits about a foot higher off the ground. It's got a totally designed different wing, different engine and afterburner, and this speed brake is significant. It's almost twice the surface area of a MiG-15. They're extendable at full, any speed, all the way up to Mach. So they have just a massive hydraulic cylinder in here that'll force them open. Above that, you'll see these colored lines above these ports. Initially, those were flare IFF, somewhat similar to what the U.S. used in World War II. Cockpit had push buttons that were the same color, so the pilot could press whichever color phosphorus flare he wanted to eject. In Vietnam, those were later replaced with some phosphorus countermeasures. I'm not sure what the degree of success they were, but that's what they swapped out in Vietnam for it. It doesn't have a flying tail, even though it's marginally supersonic. It has a horizontal stab at an elevator. And in talking to some of the Soviet bloc pilots that flew the aircraft back in the day, asking whether it really would go supersonic, several said they wish absolutely would, but that they didn't like it because it had a tough transition because of the elevator and the stab. Today at the air show, we'll go approximately 0.94 Mach, or about 600 knots, at about 20 feet off the ground. It's perfectly stable and handles great at that speed, but that's about where I'll limit the aircraft, just about transonic. This is one of the first aircraft in the world to have an operational afterburner. You can see the nozzle here, and this is opens and closes much like a modern fighter's nozzle does. You build a fire in a enclosed area, the pressure in that enclosed area is going to go to the moon, and that's basically all an afterburner does. You built a fire after the engine in an enclosed area, and the pressure goes up. So this nozzle opens up, increases the area so that the hot plasma coming off the engine can escape. When the afterburner is shut down, you'd have a loss of velocity with this big opening, so the nozzle closes back to get the opening back to a smaller area so that it can increase the thrust without afterburner. So unlike a modern one with a computer that opens and closes it all the time, this one just open or close. Very similar to the F-100 Super Sabre or our aircraft of that era. Big rudder on the airplane. It is not powered, neither is the elevator, but it just takes 2 fingers to fly. A lot of the Discovery Channel and History Channel shows that either I've been a part of or you've seen on the TV that I discussed the MiG-15s and 17s said that they didn't have hydraulic boost. That's absolutely not true. They always had hydraulic boost. You'd not be able to fly an airplane like this at the speed of sound and overcome the aerodynamic forces with just your hand. It's just not true. It flies beautifully. It's a great balanced airplane. It would be a very lethal dogfighter. Was a very lethal dogfighter. It was one of the last of the true gunships, where only later in the 70s, 80s did they add missiles to them. During the Vietnam War, it's primarily strictly a gunship. To get back a little ways from the aircraft, the production brake you see about mid-wing right there vertically is the firewall of the aircraft. And from there aft, the entire tail section, we have a dolly that bolts to the bottom of it, and the entire tail section slides off the airplane. The engine then is bolted forward to that firewall. Engine and afterburner is all exposed just out from there. Our website and better yet our Facebook fan page has, we post pictures of that maintenance cycle every year. We can see the engine torn apart in different areas and the tail off and so forth like that. So we'll take these apart, do very thorough engine inspections, and change out a lot of parts every winter. In addition to the normal maintenance that's required on the airplane, every year we pick something as a restoration project. Some part of the aircraft gets rebuilt all the way to new stats. 2 years ago on this airplane, it was sheet metal, paint, and glass. Canopy came from Germany. The windshield came from an Eastern Bloc country that we found, and the forward 2 pieces of glass had to be fabricated. We actually had to find a glass company that would build tooling for it and manufacture from scratch. So it has all new windows, all new sheet, it has tons of sheet metal work, and all new paint on it. So next year on this aircraft is Avionics. It is getting a ADS-B compliance update, GPS WAS updates, so that it's compliant with the changing airspace here in the United States. Big ailerons for the size aircraft. They're not very effective at near speed of sound, so the aircraft, even though it turns great, it doesn't roll very well at high speeds. And that's of course because with the camber of the wing, the air coming over the top of the wing gets close to the speed of sound long before the aircraft gets to the speed of sound. It creates a tremendous amount of pressure over the ailerons and makes it really difficult, even with the hydraulic boost, to roll the jet. Today, tomorrow, and Sunday, when I'm doing my vertical roll, I enter the maneuver with a 7G pull to the vertical at 450 to 500 knots indicated. Once I'm in a pure vertical, I start to roll, and if you're really watching, you'll notice it rolls slowly first, but as the airspeed bleeds off the jet, it starts rolling faster and faster and faster. And as I get close to 10,000 feet, and it's really starting to roll good, I know I'm about out of airspeed, and it's time to pull it over on its back, and she's done for the day for going straight up. So here again is the IFF that we talked about on the other wing. This side is not a pitot tube. It is merely a counterbalance, both aerodynamically to keep the aircraft balanced as it goes near the speed of sound, and for weight. So it's strictly a counterbalance. The aircraft, because even though it has the slats and so forth, has a because of this significant sweep back. In fact, let's go back and look down the wing with the camera, and you can see the two different sweep angles. I don't know of any other jet that has that particular design. In addition to that, you'll notice the wing is downward sweeping from the fuselage instead of upward sweeping. So it has an anhedral wing instead of a dihedral wing. That was done to try to keep the shock wave of going the speed of sound away from the elevator as far as possible. So we're underneath the jet here in the shade, which is a little nicer. Outboard here is a shackle mount, and you could put a drop tank, which you'll see if you're here on Sunday us departing with. We take them, we get the aircraft from point to point with the fuel drop tanks, but we take them off for flying aerobatics during the show. You can also hang ordnance there, pylon, bombs, rockets, etc. at that point in time. Gear we were talking about earlier that's designed for use in off-field. See, it's a big, long trailing link gear. It'll take a lot of punishment if the aircraft had to be landed off pavement.